Okay. So,
Mhm.
hello, good morning. I just want to introduce myself a little bit because I know you know a little bit about me, but not a whole lot. My name is Sarah Lahi. I am a hairdresser as well as your aide, obviously. I currently work in Benicia, which is a small little town between Vallejo and Martinez, if you're familiar with those areas. But before that, I was working in San Francisco for about 7, 8 years. And that salon I actually learned about while I was in beauty school. So they came and did a presentation, and that's how I even heard about the salon in San Francisco. And that's where my career was for like the last 8 years. So it's just a cool little like roundabout way is why I have a great special spot in my heart for beauty schools, because it's where I really got my career started from. So I just wanted to share that little tidbit with you guys. The salon itself was very heavy in education, so it allowed me a lot of possibilities to go train and take classes in New York and in LA, enter competition. It was also very heavy on its apprentice program. So I did apprentice for 2 years at a beauty school. So don't worry if you feel like you don't know anything, because I felt when I left I didn't know anything, but the fundamentals you learn in beauty school do set you up for a great start in apprentice programs. And I strongly stress that you guys do that. It's very important to me, and I think it'll just help your career take off too. So I'm going to be talking about some fringes today. I did pull up a little PowerPoint. I'm going to see if I can share the screen with you, just so we can look at a couple different fringes, just to get our like energy flowing about it, get us in the zone about bangs. And I think I feel bangs are one of those things, or fringe is one of those things that can really make or break your haircut. We know that you can do a beautiful haircut, but if your bangs are a centimeter too short, they might be stressing about it a little much. So I think it's something to not be afraid of, to take your time on. It's not unheard of to take a good 20, 30 minutes on a bang trim, especially those very blunt ones. So I think beginners or someone that's been doing this for a long time, it's always great to take your time and not worry how long it takes, but that the end result is perfect. So we're going to, let me see if I can share this with you guys real fast. Oh, I can't share it with you. Miss Knowles, are you able to like allow me to share or no?
Let me see.
Mm-hmm. It says it's disabled on my side. Darn it.
Not yet. Let me see.
If not, I'll just.
No, hold on. Just got to figure out. I think I'm not the host either, so I can't give it to you.
Oh,
Give me 1 second.
okay. Does anyone have a story about bangs they want to share? Bad bang trim, good bang trim? Hmm? No. Well, we'll see. So what we're going to do, the 3 bang trims I want to show you guys are the really popular curtain bangs right now, where it's not quite fringe, it's almost like a shorter layer. And then I'm going to show you how to do some side swept bangs, and then also just those more forward rounded down bangs. And the sectioning is very kind of universal for all bangs. So hopefully it sets you up to be able to explore other bang shapes too.
Miss Knowles, I made you the host if you want to send me back to the breakout room.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you. Okay, let's see. 1 second, Sarah.
No problem.
Okay, try it now.
Okay.
I made you the co-host, not the host. So let's see.
Okay.
Let's see what happens. You have access to share? There you go.
Yeah. You can see it?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So this is the curtain bangs I want to show you guys first. So we can see they kind of start, and it varies, right? But they start around like cheekbone, and then they start to open up into like, sometimes they have a longer layer that they connect to, sometimes they are very disconnected. But these are two versions I wanted to show you. So we're gonna start here. Then, I don't know how to switch pages. Oh, there we go. And then here's our more forward bangs. They have longer on the corners, a little shorter in the center, and these are very piecey on the ends. Usually that's achieved either by point cutting or with a razor. And then here is the same style of bangs, forward, rounded on the sides, but more blunt. And the ones in the bottom corner, she's actually really square, right? She's not rounded around the corners. She comes out on the edges, so it's very, very like, straight line across. And there's our side swept bangs. These can be done shorter or longer. So the sectioning I'll show you, I'm gonna keep them a little bit longer so I can do all three bang types. But the sectioning and the cutting will be the same, but it's just, you get to decide the length on them. And here's some curly bangs are super popular. Sectioning remains the same, but when you're cutting curly hair, it's the tension in your hands that changes. And here's our V bangs, or Betty Page bangs too. Again, sectioning remains the same, but it is blunt cut, and these are part of the hardest bangs to do, and I hate them just because they take so long to make those perfect V shape on either side. But these bangs I'd probably spend a good half hour achieving. But it's all just about like taking your time and making sure the line looks even. And then here's just some little baby bangs that are all shredded too. So either with a lot of point cutting or with a razor too. And then, so this is going to be our sectioning for basically all the bang trims. We're going to be creating a V on the top of the head, and then we'll be doing some subsections inside of that. So I want you to remember, like, this triangle is what I'll be talking about for a lot of the sectioning. All right, cool. Any questions about that so far? Okay, let me go back to, how do I stop sharing?
At the top.
There we go. Okay. In the back. So let me see if I can get this set up so you can actually see it. I'm gonna move a table closer. Can you guys see it, all that poster in the background? Or maybe I can zoom on there. Okay. So better. Okay, so I'm gonna start by showing you the sectioning, and then maybe I'll try to zoom in on the picture. So we're gonna start with these curtain bangs, the ones that open up around the cheekbones. But first I wanna show you how to get that triangle sectioning. So it's gonna vary on each person's head because we're gonna be following the person's headline and their head shape. So the first 2 points of the triangle are going to be at your hairline. So you're gonna find the high recession. So we all know everyone has our little undulating like hairlines. So you can see where my clips are now, where my hair is clipped up, it recedes right in through here. So that's gonna be your either point on the triangle, and then we're gonna have a point in the back, that's our high point. So how we find, so you first pull the person's hair back, find those 2 recessions, a high recession on either side. And then we're going to take your comb and balance it on top of the person's head. You guys done this? And you find where that center point is. So wherever the hairline is the highest, where that comb can center on top, that's gonna be your point of the triangle. So each person's head rounds either farther or higher up. So that's where it's gonna be different in each person. So we know that the point of the high point is back here. And we know that our recession is over here. So that's gonna be my first point of the triangle. So I'm gonna keep my finger here, find my high point. And the comb, I'm not combing the hair, like, let me get a little closer. I feel like you guys can't see me. I wonder if I can make myself bigger so I can see what you guys see. I don't know. Okay. Oh, here. Sorry. Okay. So when you're combing and when you're sectioning, we're not using the tip of our comb to section. I'm gonna lay the comb flat. I'm gonna lay it against that high point of the head. I'm gonna have my other finger underneath where I want the section to end. I'm gonna lay the comb flat and comb to that high recession. So that becomes the first line of the triangle. You can see when you do this, it's a really nice, clean, straight line. If you can see, I have a makeshift doll mannequin stand, so it's not the best, guys. You should see what it's like on a toy. Okay, I'm gonna go to the other recession over here. Take that high point again and draw a line to my finger. And then that becomes my triangle section. Can you guys see that? Okay. So let me make sure since I'm sideways. Okay, I'm just gonna clip all this out of the way. So have you ever seen, or this is why we find this high point on the head. Have you ever seen bangs or someone's hair that it looks like their bangs, like her hair's laying here and her bangs, like someone will have like a chunk of hair that's too short kind of hanging up over the side? Have you noticed that before? And it's like, what is this like weird chunk hanging off the side of their head? It's because our head rounds. So if we went past this high point is telling us where the hair is gonna round back down. If we went past it, that hair is actually gonna fall to the side. So you end up with this extra chunk of bangs off to the side of their head. So we wanna find the high point because that's gonna tell us what is gonna fall forward and what's gonna fall to the sides. So anything in front of that high point of the head is gonna fall forward. And then also with these recessions, if we went farther down on their hairline, again, since our hairline goes in and out, you would end up, if we went any farther, you know how we have, it's hard to see on my own hairline, this comes back out, we go in and back out. If we cut the bangs farther back, you're gonna have all this hair underneath and then the bangs are sit on top of that. So it's kind of like a weird look, right? So that's why we start at this recession here. And again, it's rounding. Does that make a little sense? Any questions about that?
Oh, I do. Sorry.
Yeah, go please.
When you said we want to find the high point on the head, and you said you want to do it in front of that, do we want to find the high point, then take it a little bit in front of it so we're not exactly at the high point?
No, I would start just right at that very point.
Oh, you're saying if you go behind the high point?
Yeah, if you go behind that, that's when the hair will start to fall to the side instead of forward.
Okay, thank you.
If someone has very thick hair, you can make this triangle section shorter. You can go in front of that high point as if they don't want such thick bangs, but you don't want to go past it because that's when you'll have hair falling off to the side or you'll have bangs like in the back of their head or something weird.
Okay, but you still want it at the...
Yeah, but I always keep at the high recessions.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. You'll see sometimes in like avant-garde hair or like some of those pictures of those triangle bangs, sometimes they will go past into the hairline, but then they'll almost shave that off and it's usually an avant-garde look if we're going something really extreme, but they would usually cut all this excess hair off. Well,
thank you.
yeah, of course. Okay. Let me know if you can't see because I know this is hard. So what we're gonna do with the curtain bangs is I'm going to start with a sliver at the tip of my triangle and I'm gonna go straight down this way. That's gonna be our first section. Gonna be right down the center. And I'm just gonna start with a little bit of hair. It's gonna be a very small sliver. This is gonna be our initial guide. Can you see that? So I'm going to determine what length I want the shortest to be. And that's going to be in consultation with your guest if we want it to fall at cheekbone, or longer, or even shorter. And this is going to be the piece that when it's all done, it's going to open up and it's going to push back this way. So that's going to be your shortest. So for her, I'm going to decide that I want a little longer because we have to do several bang trims. So let me section these out of the way so you can just see it. Or clip these out of the way. Let me turn her sideways. So how I'm going to cut this is my comb. Is it too? We're going to hold the hair out, hold down, but my comb is actually going to go like this. Can you guys see that? So the bottom of the comb is pointing towards her nose, and it's going out this way. So not this way, we're gonna go this way. So it's gonna be longer on top and then shorter on the bottom when it falls down. Does that make sense? So shorter hair pushes longer hair. So when this is down, the shorter hair underneath is gonna push up and push over. And we're gonna have shorter in the center and longer on the ends. So that shorter hair is gonna push that longer hair and open it up around the face. So just shout if you can't see, because I'm trying to make sure you can see and cut this hair. So I'm gonna keep her pretty long. So around mouth length. And I'll measure like all the time. It's okay to go and like grab a piece of hair and be like, oh, where do I want it? Like, don't be afraid to take your time to really visualize on this person's hair that you're using for cutting. Make sure that your section, that you're not pulling this very first piece. You don't want to be pulling one way or the other. You want to be pulling it right down the center. So it's always nice to double check that with your hand and body position, and also check in the mirror. So even when you're doing layering, and you're doing a center section, look in the mirror to make sure you're not pulling it one side or the other. It's a good tip for you guys. Okay, so my angle, my fingers, my tips of my fingers are pointing towards me, and be cutting at this diagonal here. And that's gonna be my first piece. Could you see that? Do I need to do it again? With me? Okay, now, my next sectioning, I'm gonna keep taking these vertical slices. I'm just gonna work on one half of the head and then we'll work on the other half of the bangs. Have you guys heard of the rule that the amount of hair in your hand when you're cutting, your hair, your guide, the amount of hair that you're holding, 70% of the hair should be your guide and 30% should be the hair you're going to cut. So my guide is this big. I want about 30% of that hair in my hand as what I'm going to cut. So that way you can always see your guide. Now, if we know over direction, if I want the corners of these bangs to be longer, I want to over direct this hair across her forehead so that it's traveling farther. So when it comes back, it's going to be longer. So I'm going to now pull this hair across her face the opposite way of what I want it to fall. So when it comes back, it's going to fall this way. So we're going to go across. I'm going to find my guide, which is about here. And then remember, it's also at an angle. It's how we cut it. So if we go straight, we're not going to be able to see our guide. So remember that we cut it with the heel of our hand towards our head and our fingers kicking out. So in real life, you wouldn't be cutting like this. I want you to stand in front of your section over here. Here, can you actually see? I was hoping, I was worried that I'd block your view. Here we go. That makes it a little bit easier. So tips of my fingers pointing to her nose, the heel of my hand pointing out. I find my guide. And it's gonna be cut shorter to longer because it's at an angle. Can you see? That's my next section. Again, I'm going to be taking a vertical slice. Sorry, guys. At this point, we can just hold all that hair in our hand. They're just gonna build on top of each other. It's not a traveling guide, it's all stationary at this point, so we're gonna leave everything here. We're not gonna be dropping anything out of our hands.
Does it matter if you cut with wet hair or dry hair?
So wet hair is easier to cut because hair is weaker when it's wet. It also It is good for cleaner sectioning. So I would recommend that. Most bang trims, if I was doing something longer like this, it'd be part of the whole haircut, so her hair would still be wet. If she was coming in with just wanting these bangs and her hair was dry and I wasn't gonna wash her, I'd probably still wet it down too. If they're doing very blunt bangs, I would first cut out a like general outline and when it's wet, and then I would refine it once it's dry. Did I answer your question? What hair is good for your sectioning and for just control? So I would technically wipe her down. I just got ahead of myself. Are you guys able to see that guide in there at all? I was able to see it. So I want my hands to come back down to where they were. So if I was holding my hands up higher this way, you need to remember just where your hands were when you started that second section. So if you're up here, one section, and the next time you're coming down here, you're gonna have different wonky lines. So try to remember where your body position is. If that means that your fingers are always pointing at her nose, if that means your elbow was like from a sign on the wall, you know your elbow is in line with that sign, just something to remember, like your elevation when you're doing any haircut. But I knew I was down here. I'm gonna find my section again, cut my line. And this is a lot of hair in my hands. You can see I'm like recombing to grab that bottom piece. And I'm gonna grab this last section, bring it across. And one thing I want you to be aware of is that this is not being combed up here. I'm not pushing it up and over. I'm pushing it down and across. So it's just following a nice smooth plane. That make sense? So in this last section, it came from that very tip of the triangle. So no, there's nothing up here that I really need to cut. It's more down at the bottom. Cool. Can you see now on her that it starts a little shorter and goes longer? That's because of our over direction. There's one little hair I missed. So that way, when she goes back, she has these shorter pieces in front, and then it goes to these longer pieces down below. So you can imagine if this was a lot shorter, that you could have these really cute, like shorty, like pieces around her cheekbone and then go longer, or you could have them even shorter around her eye and then go longer too, just based on your over direction and the length you decide to cut. Cool. Now let's do the other side. So this side is done. I'm going to take that very first center sliver that was our original guide. I'm going to pull that out, so that's going to help us be even on both sides. I'm going to clip this out of the way. Where did my clip go? I lost it. Okay, so now we're going to be on this side of the head. We're going to take a vertical section down, put that excess out of the way. And this time we're going to come across the face this way towards me. Something you can help you remember that where your hands were elevated to is points on her face. So if I was on this side and I knew that my hand was kind of pointing towards her nose when I was over here holding the hair, then I would try to do the same thing over this way. Or if I knew that my fingers were pointing towards her ear, then I would know like my hand needs to be somewhere where the tips of my fingers are pointing towards her ear if it was happening over here. Yeah? Okay, so I'll bring that across. Find my guide. Take another vertical section. Bring it across. Using low elevation. And our last section. All right, and we can look for our like slanted down line. Let both of these go and see if I actually did it even or not. I feel like one side might be a little longer. Oh no, we're good. What do you guys think? That's pretty easy peasy, yeah? So if you look at it, when it's just straight down, right, you can see that line. But we know how hard it is to actually go on either side of the head and just go in there and like cut a diagonal and make sure it matches. This is a great way just by over direction to get that like perfect line to open up on either side of her face. What do you think? It's a new fringe we're gonna do now. And what's cool is that you can carry this into the face framing part of the haircut, that if we decided we wanted this to connect to this like front pieces down in front of her ear, you would drop that section out and then continue what we're doing with the over direction. Is that clear? Make sense? Cool. So I want you guys, when you do this, I want you to try longer and then go shorter and shorter and see how you could have really short pieces at the eyebrow and still have a long sweepy to the sides. And it becomes how you style it too, how you open it if you want pieces more forward. She can still wear them off to the side if she wanted to. It's just a cool way for our curtain bangs that are super popular right now. All right, if we have no questions about those, I want to go into little side swept bangs. Sound good? All right. I see one person nodding. Thank you. So side swept bangs. So the same thing, we're going to start with our triangle sectioning. First triangle. And then it's pretty similar actually to our last bang trim. So side swept bangs, something like this, right? If someone doesn't want their fringe to be so much across their forehead, you can kind of open it just depending on what you visually think looks best and what they like. If they already have a side part, you can go off that side part and make it so that they're not so heavy across their fringe. If they really want that bang that goes like all the way over here and comes all the way across, then I would start at that edge of the triangle. But because our head rounds also this way, know that some of this hair is gonna wanna fall on this side. So you can either cut it to have this opening on either side and still keep it side swept, or you can just leave this long and just cut the bangs only. Depends on what you feel like and what the guest wants as well. Sometimes they want a little hair on both sides, sometimes they don't. Yeah? I'm gonna say she wants a big full bang. Do a little emo bangs here. So this subsection, instead of taking vertical rows, we're gonna go on a diagonal. So I'm gonna take a little tiny triangle out of this first section. I'll section this out of the way so you can see. Can you all see that little tiny triangle there? So I sectioned it at, this was my main guide, and I went in a diagonal. Yeah? Again, I want to leave a little length for the next bang. So I'm going to leave half her bangs. I would take this little piece and decide where you want it to start across their forehead. If she wants the bangs to start more in the middle of her forehead, so they kind of open up across, or if they want to really swoop towards the eye, that's going to determine your length for that starting piece. So I'm gonna make them slightly longer. So my hand is going to mimic this line here. So since this is a diagonal, I want my hand to mimic that sectioning. So when I'm combing it down, I want my comb to mimic the line I just created in that subsection. My fingers are going to follow it as well. I'm not going to create this subsection and then comb like this and then just put my hands in some other way. It makes it kind of wonky and makes it like visually hard to see what you're doing. So it's a really good practice that you're combing, that your subsections match your cutting section. So this is my line here. I want my comb down to mimic that subsection, and then I want my hands to mimic it as well. And that's the line I'm going to cut. Make sense? And bring it down. Go a little bit shorter. And that's my first section. And then we can always test it to see how it's going to fall. And since how I was holding it, since I'm not, this time I'm cutting it at just a straight line. I'm not combing it more diagonal either direction. So that means when it swoops back over, this top here is going to be shorter than underneath here. That makes sense? And you can just visualize when you do that yourself, you can see it, and I would just hold the hair and watch it fall. And you can tell that this very top of that subsection is going to be shorter than the one down here. So it's almost going to create a little bit of a layered effect in our bangs. So I'm going to do another diagonal section. So in my hands, I'm going to hold 70% of the hair, and then the new hair I'm going to cut is about 30% of this whole subsection. And I'm going to do a stationary guide as well too. I'm not going to travel. You can travel if you want to, but what that does, by not traveling, you're retaining a lot of length in this far corner. If I was doing a traveling guide, you would lose more length. And again, that's just how you want the bangs to look. So stationary guide. I can see through this hair I'm about to cut, I can see where my guide was. My fingers mimic this sectioning up here. I'm going to cut a straight line. Okay, nice clean combing. I'm not moving the hair around, not over directing a hair up or down. It's just a very nice, clean, straight palette. So take all that hair, find my guide. Stationary guides are nice because you can hold all that hair so you can really see your guide, right? It's easier to find. I'm just going to be working through my triangle. And last section. So again, I'm doing this all very long, so it almost looks like a longer face frame layer, but I just want to give you guys the ideas of the sectioning, and then you play with the length. So start out longer and go shorter, so you can see what each result looks like. Can we see that bottom length that goes shorter to longer? That's all because of the over direction. And then she's going to swoop across. And she'll give us the start of our side swept bangs. Can you see if that was shorter, how it'd fall more at her eye? You guys have any questions about that? And she also has a lot of thick hair, right? So usually in a doll or a person that has a lot of hair, I would maybe go and like point cut all this too and soften it, remove out a little bit of weight. But that starts the general shape of your bangs, of your side swept bangs. Cool. All right. So moving along, if we have any questions about the side swept, then I want to go into the forward, more heavy fringe. Sound good?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Sorry. So if they do have a lot of hair, do you still go all the way back to their highest point for the sectioning?
So that depends on when your consultation is. So if they like to have a really full, like if their pictures show that they want really thick bangs, or if you ask them about that, then yes, I would keep it. But if they want a little more like wispier pieces, then you can make your point of your triangle lower in their head. But it'd still be a triangle, it would just be more forward. You wouldn't go all the way to the high point. But you wouldn't go past the high point ever. Does that make sense? Yeah? Answer your question? Okay, good. Now, forward bang. Oh, here, let me just show you my little picture so you can see. My drawing, guys, don't judge these. So this is our curtain bangs. Vertical sectioning, one side directed to one other side directed to the other. Here's the bangs we just did. The sectioning is more diagonal and it's all pulled to a stationary guide. And then now we're going to do our more forward bangs. There's a couple different ways, I mean, to do almost any haircut, right? But this is just one way that I like to do it. So we're gonna take vertical sections and we're gonna pull them down and we're gonna create a rounded shape. So for her, I am gonna wet her down a little bit just for more control.
Miss Lahi,
Yeah.
is it okay if we take a picture of like your little thing on your wall? Your
Yeah, totally. You want me to do, maybe at the end I'll pull back up for you guys. Okay.
take a screenshot of it.
Let me clean this up as well. So never be afraid to take the time to really make sure your working space is clean. Because you know it's going to give you better results. I think sometimes we get in our head like, oh, I'm taking too long on this one simple thing. They think I'm messing up, but we know that those nice clean sections, even taking a second just to breathe helps you give them a better outcome. So don't think that like something as simple as combing makes you look unknowledgeable, because it makes you look very knowledgeable. I feel like I'm super far from the camera, so let me know if you need me to move. I'll do the whole thing over again for you guys. This section looks a little off here. Normally I would just use water, but I don't have a spray bottle at home, so I'm just using some leave-in conditioner. So when you're doing these bangs, I really like to comb the hair, like keep combing and combing and combing to see where the edges of that triangle want to fall out. Just based on, look for any cowlicks. So if we see a certain part is jumping a ton, we know that we're going to use less tension there. We know we're probably going to use a little more just our eyes to refine it. Seeing where if that cowlick wants to go to one side or the other, we know that's going to mess with our line in the end. And it's always the people that have the most cowlicks that want these blunt forward bangs. Mark my words. They won't make your life hard. Okay, so now that I'm happy with the general combing, let's see here. I like to start with my initial guide as that very first center little sliver right above the nose. Usually I take this pretty small because if we want the bangs, the end result of these bangs are going to be rounded like this. So I don't want to take a big wide chunk and then have it be like a straight line and then round it on the corners, right? So I'm going to start with a very little sliver right in the middle. That's going to determine the shortest piece, and then we're going to round around that. So for these bangs, we're going to use very low elevation. So what I mean by that, click this out of the way. So we're going to use, so we want the end result to be a blunt line that's rounded somewhere around her eyes. We want to stop top of cheekbone. So I'm not going to raise this hair, because if we start to raise it and cut this way, if we're holding her hair up here and cutting, when we lower it, this top stuff is going to be a little bit shorter. Like this hair will look shorter than this bottom length. So you'll have this little lip underneath the hair, or so it can look a little piecier textured. So if we want to have really piecey bangs, that's the way to do it, is by elevating. But if we want something really blunt, we want to keep low elevation. Yeah? So sometimes it's hard because our hands are going to be right here in their face. You might hold out a little bit, but just know if you hold out farther, you're going to create a little bit of a lip in the hair. So same thing for cutting a line in that bottom length. The more we lift it up, the less it looks like a blunt line. It looks more layered, yeah? Let me see. Can you see if I cut this way? I also feel like my girl's head is a little sideways here. Do you guys know what ladder ball is? You know that game? I'll just show it to you. It's like a stand, it has like 3 rungs, and then you throw a string that has 2 balls on it, and counts, it's like a garden game. So that's what I have my doll on right now. Should I show it to you? Look. Because I don't have a doll stand. So I had to cut the hole on the inside to make it all fit. So it's like, we're making it work. Okay, so 0 elevation, I'm gonna cut that first line where I want it to be. So if she had a lot of jumpy hair, if she had curly hair, I would probably do this with very, like the wider tooth comb, because that's gonna give us less tension. Or I would do it when her hair is more dry, just so I avoid that when it blows dries that it springs up too much, yeah? Okay, so my first section is gonna be right at middle of eye, a little bit above.
Ms. Lahi, maybe you could cut a little bit less so you can maybe cut it a couple of times and show them versus
Sure.
kind of cutting it all.
Yeah, okay. Her head is like sideways, okay. Okay, we'll leave it a little longer. So let's go bridge a nose, yeah? And I'm just gonna cut a blunt line. My first section is gonna be that straight line, and I'm not too worried about it rounding right now because, like I said, I took a small sliver. And you guys probably already know this too, that you can pull all of this hair to this center point, and because of over direction, it will round itself automatically if you direct it all towards the center. And that's great. It's a way to do it. I also I would do that sometimes, and then I would go and refine that line too after in this way. Maybe I'll show you that real fast. So what I mean by over directing towards center is taking all the rest of this section, bringing it to the center piece that I just cut, and then cutting a straight line. So you see how this hair is starting to come here. It's not buckled on top of each other as much, but I usually keep it still very combed down and straight. But the more it's pushed this way, the longer this edge down here is gonna be. Yeah. Same thing as when we did the curtain bangs. But I like to visualize, if I know I want this to be bridge of nose, I'm gonna want the ending point to be bottom of cheekbone. So I'm gonna take another little sliver of hair. And this time, I'm gonna take half of this first section that I did. Keep low elevation. And then the tips of my finger are gonna start pointing down towards that cheekbone. So I'm gonna go like this, yeah? Sorry, I have to turn it a little bit. That's gonna start your rounded line. This doll is so thick. Let's take another vertical section. With my hands. So this new section isn't going towards the center. It's going to stay where it lives, and my body is going to travel with it. So my hands are going to move down, not stay in the same place. My new subsection, my fingers are pointing towards her cheekbone. And then my last section. No, this is hard to see. Maybe I can try to do another side. My tips of my fingers are pointing to her cheekbone, and I feel my hand is going up. And then usually once I blow dry, I would go and refine any of this like weirdness that might be happening.
Well, and also with like styling too, that'll help it not look as like straight and sticky down.
Yeah,
You know,
and she looks like super like puff, like
yeah,
like, blow drying will definitely like bevel a little bit and all that good stuff too. So I'm gonna go to the other side. Maybe you can see the side a little better. And also the shoe's it's thick, right? So I would also, even if I didn't want the line to be too textured, I would still maybe remove a little bit of weight in there so it's not so heavy. And at this point too, I'm not too worried about how great that line looks because I know I need to refine it anyways. These bangs probably take the longest out of all the bangs to do. I'm saying you're like 20-minute bang trim. So combing that hair where it lives, I'm not directing it to the center, I'm directing it just straight down from where it lives. Trying to use minimal elevation, and my hand is now, tips of my finger are pointing up, and I want the palm of my hand to aim somewhere towards her cheekbone, where I did on the other side of her face. I already tell you these are probably gonna be a little uneven, but that's okay. Doesn't matter at this point, as long as she doesn't leave with that uneven, right? Okay, my fingers are angled. Combing nice and smooth. Sometimes it's nice too to kind of double check your hand, like, wait, am I pointing too far? Do I need to even it out a little more? Like use your mirror just so you can see what you're doing. And our last section. Here we go. Some very long forward bangs. How do you guys feel about that? Feeling okay? So do we want to see, I do want to show you how to blow dry straight across bangs. So I would like to make her shorter. But after I would do this, I'd go and refine. So I'd do this blunt in there, get the hair, like get the general shape, make sure there's nothing too crazy or too long hanging out, like these weird little long pieces. And then I would go blow dry her, and then I would refine. I do a lot of refining with like point cutting, with just, yeah, a lot of point cutting toward the end. Helps with any little jumpies. All right, should we make her a little shorter and then blow dry? Yeah. So one more time. So this is like if she came in, what, 3 months after bang trim and need them trimmed again so she could see. I would start the same way. Is there any other bangs that you guys have been seeing that you love?
The curtain bangs, the ones that you did first, those are really cool.
They're cute, huh? So easy, really.
Well, especially like when it's like kind of like when she did the shag haircut as well, like when it's like longer and then shorter, and then you have like those curtain bangs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
It kind of makes the haircut. Can you imagine how different it'd look without them? The haircut looked totally different.
Yeah, it would look a little wonky without them.
Right? It's a different look. It really makes it. And then doing the same sectioning, and then just do it with a razor instead too. That's a totally different look. Ooh, and remind me, I want to show you when these are done, when I blow dry them, a cool way to use your thinning shears for them. All right, so I'm going to start with the center point again, center vertical section in our triangle, our nice little sliver. Yeah. It's hard for me not to block you guys on the camera, so yell at me. Let's make them a little shorter. And how rounded they are does depend on your finger angle, right? If you want them to be really closed in, then you would make your angles of your fingers, you'd bend your fingers a lot more and point more. If you wanted to go out wider, you wouldn't necessarily point as, you wouldn't round down as much. If we wanted these to look really square, like in that one picture, I take the same sectioning, but my fingers wouldn't start to tilt down. They would just go across and I would still travel with my hand. My body would still move, but my hair would be combed where it lives. The hair is not being over-directed. And it creates that really cool, like blunt line. I love it. Her like sideways head is driving me crazy. A little shorter. You can also, do you guys know about point cutting yet? A nice way to take little snips out of the hair is I'm holding the scissors very vertically and I'm taking little snips out of the hair. I'm not turning it so much where I'm taking big notches. So that's when you can end up with like a chunk out of their hair. Can you see that at all? The scissors would be very vertical and I'm going up and down. So you're taking out very, very fine pieces. Where if your scissors are angled more, you're going to take out a big old notch of hair. You'll really see it. Yeah. So something to think of is that you want them, if you don't want to see big like choppy chunks, keep your scissors very vertical and go in and out of the hair. Or not even in and out, just keep them vertical. You can see these little shards of hair starting to fall down. Just helps soften that line without disturbing it, without changing the whole line. So very minimal tension. I cut that very first straight line. No. The struggle of the doll heads, guys, right? Am I right?
Just show us the point cutting for the whole bang when you're done.
Yeah, I'll show you at the end where you find it, how you could do that.
Oh, thank you.
Because you can definitely do her whole bangs point cutted for sure. Sometimes it just takes longer. So it's nice to just like cut that line in and then go and like soften it. If you really wanted like one of those pictures that were super, super choppy, then I would do point cutting, but it'd be very much more like at that sharp angle to make them look super chunky. But sometimes it just takes longer because it's like little tiny cuts, right? It's easier to cut a big chunk this way than it is to do it this way. just to like not keep having the same thing over and over. Right? So I can kind of see, I don't know if you can tell on this doll head, that next vertical section I took right here, down at the bottom, it wants to kind of fall this way. So I don't want to comb it too much to the center. I want it to just comb it where it's going to live and then cut that. My fingers are the ones that are angled. Oh, another, I mean, I feel like I'm contradicting myself a little bit when I said make your fingers match your sectioning. If you felt like this was too much hair and you're scared you're gonna get lost, you can take horizontal sections and pick this up out of your way. Make sure that line that you're combing is rounded itself. And then make sure your fingers then can match that sectioning. Yeah? So if you're afraid we're gonna get lost with just the pure vertical sectioning, you can do horizontal, round out that sectioning, and then have your fingers match it. That way your fingers and your cutting and your comb and your fingers and your sectioning all match. When it's visually set up like that, it sets you up a little more for success. So your eyes aren't kind of tricked looking at one thing but cutting another. And it's less hair to hold too.
Sorry, I have another question.
Yes, tell me.
So when you do it that way though, you won't get that much of a bend though, right? Since you're doing it at like a straight angle with your fingers. You won't really get that round bend.
You want to get a bend this way? You do, because you want your sectioning not to be straight. You want it to actually be rounded as well.
I meant like
Yep.
like you'll have like the same, like you won't have that bend with your fingers because you're keeping your fingers straight. Like you're not really getting the full.
So you want your fingers to still be slightly tilted down too.
Okay.
Is that answering it? So if your sectioning is slightly rounded, then you want your fingers to mimic that. So, I mean, your fingers can't curve, right? So that's why we take these little individual slivers to work on. And then your finger, so it doesn't look like they're really tilted because it's such a small piece, but you do want the back of your hand to drop a little bit and point down. I'm not making hers so extreme, so they're not going to be it's not going to be as obvious of a curve down. Does that help answer? Okay. Can you see them? It's rounded down though, Hannah. Can you see that?
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Do you guys like doing it better this way? More horizontal sections across? Is that easier to see? You can see she's a little wonky. So that's one half, and then we're gonna do the other half. Okay. Right, so I told you this is like the longest thing trim, this part, right? These ones are hard. Now imagine doing this and then doing that triangle. It's like doing eyeliner, getting both sides to match, right? I'm gonna let her down just a little bit. I like to like recomb and kind of adjust and like make sure it's looking right. And again, I know it's not perfect, but once it's dry, I'm gonna go refine all those lines. I'm taking a slightly rounded sectioning for subsectioning, combing this down where the hair wants to live, using very little elevation. You can see her head is like leaning to the side too, which is not helping me. That's why, don't be afraid. I'm the worst at like telling my clients to put their head in the right way. So don't not be afraid to say like, put your head straight for me, or to move their head for them, because they don't realize they're doing it themselves. But I'm kind of, I don't know, I get timid about that, which is funny. There's a point of like wanting the customer to be comfortable, but also you need your hair to look right. So they need to sit right. All right, last section. So we have a general shape in there. We know it's not perfect. There's a little beveling going on, so it's probably how it's elevating. So I'm gonna trim that up when we blow dry, but I wanna show you guys how to dry it now. And my biggest tip, and I tell this to clients, and it's great for the ones, especially people that have crazy cowlicks or those little baby hairs that just wanna like fluff up, or really curly hair and they wear their hair smooth. I'd put some type of hold product in their hair, be it a mousse, sometimes there's like thickening sprays, gels, something that's hold. And then I'm gonna use a fine tooth comb, and I'm gonna use their forehead like an ironing board. So I'll spray some hold product in there. I'm gonna direct their hair one direction, so maybe first coming towards me with my fine tooth comb, and then blow dry down with the grain. And so by me, like, so I'm just pushing the hair against their forehead. It's gonna come all this way, and then it's gonna go back the other way, which is especially great if they do have like strong cowlicks that want to jump. I would really like hold that cowlick down and hit it with a blow dryer, or make sure you have some gel or something that has hold, some product in there that's going to help it stay down too. It's going to create a very nice, like super straight bangs, but because their forehead is rounding, it also creates just a little bit of bevel on the ends without being like this big bubbly bit fringe. Yeah. These, I don't have a flat brush with me normally, but normally I would blow dry these bangs with a flat brush. It kind of looks like a paddle brush, but it has a little like semicircle on it, and they're usually a little more bristly. So paddle brushes have a lot of air that flows through. I like the boar bristle flat brushes. The round brushes will create a lot of bubbly, right? Close to that, Tatiana, but I usually like them. They actually curve the other way, so it actually curve out instead of in, and with a little more bristles too, because the tension is nice for the bangs. I like Olivia Garden brushes. They have those are my fave. They have a flat brush though. Okay, so let's try these. Let me plug. So the blow dryer I have is like this old, really old blow dryer, guys. Not the salon stuff. So usually I do the comb first, make sure I get all the cowlicks out, nice heavy tension to keep it really smooth. And then I would maybe go in with a brush once it's getting drier. And then if I really needed to, do a little bit of beveling with like my flat brush. Yeah. Can you see that as I'm blow drying, I'm following the comb and the blow dryer throughout the hair to finish the ends. I'm not just holding it here and combing. So I'm following, the blow dryer is following my brush or my comb, right? And again, using her forehead is kind of like, and I would say an ironing board. So it's helped creating that like work for me and creating tension to smooth out the hair. So one way and then the other way. If I feel like they look too broomsticky still, and she has too much hair, that's when I would almost do, I'd do like a section. Have you ever blow dried bangs? If I took all this in one and put the brush just underneath here, you're gonna create a lot of bevel here, and this is gonna be super, super flat. So I do like to break into two pieces. So I can get close to the root, create a little polish on the ends, and then this can be close to the root as well and more polish on the ends. So that way, if you're just doing it all down here, this ends up being like so flat and you have this weird little like bubble happening at the tips. And she has a ton of conditioner hair now, so she's super sticky. So sticky. Let it go. Brush like does not want to go through her hair. How I also like to blow dry. So once I'm done my comb action with the blow dryer, I would section her hair in 3 chunks. So one down the center and then one down the sides. And that's how I'd approach it with her bangs with the brush. So I put the brush in down the center. So I'm doing them right forward and then I'm brushing off to the side where we want them to lay. And I do this one on this side. Yeah. So at this point, get all this extra hair out of the way. So this is a point where I'd go refine and make sure that line looks good because she is like super wonky over here. So that was something to do with my angle was a lot different than that side. So super minimal tension. I have that comb against her head. I know that this needs to come up more because I can even see where it jumps right in there. So you can go through point cutting. And I would try to travel the way you want the line to go. So if I start going this way, it's going to change the whole shape. So, and since I need a lot of hair off, I am going to angle my comb or my scissors a lot more diagonal than straight up and down. If I was holding them more straight up and down, it would just be for softening. But if I want to remove more hair, I'm going to keep it at an angle. But very little snips because I still want it to look pretty blunt in the end. let me know if you can't see what I'm doing, which I know is hard because it's on Zoom. I try to make sure my comb is mimicking, it's just slightly diagonal down to mimic what's happening over here. That comb becomes your guide so you're not cutting too much or too little. Looking better. More helpful if her head was on straight. I mean, we already know that everything on a doll head is 1,000 times harder than on a person too, right? Or easier, actually. Now on a person, if I can't see her eyes, I'm not gonna go start chopping into her eyeball, right? So it's nice to keep your comb there so that you are lifting the hair a little bit so you can make sure where her eye is. We're not chopping it off. It's easy to forget, like on the doll head, like we wanna make sure that we are doing right practices on our doll head so that we don't do that to a person. Surprising the transition. So they're starting looking pretty good. Shape's not too bad, yeah? And so that's when you would just go ahead and use your point cutting. If I want them to be softer overall, like I just feel like they're chunky, you can hold them out like this. And this is where I would do the point cutting where it is more vertically into the hair. So that I'm not creating out notches in the hair, but I am just removing some of that weight. Can you see some of that hair falling? Am I like blocking the view at all? You would stand in front of your section, nice and taut so the hair is not flopping around. You're able to see that hair at all, guys? I feel like the background is not working for you. Your comb is going, your scissors going in very vertically and just taking out slivers of hair. That creates some space for the hair to collapse on top of itself. Another cool way to do that too is with your thinning shears. You have to stand on this side though. So a lot of times I'm standing like a lot behind the doll, but when you're doing this yourself, I want you to stand in front of the doll so you're not accidentally like, so you want to work in front of the section, right? This is just for demo purposes. But here's a way, something that's cool to practice on your doll. So with your thinning shears, if we go in there and create just like a blunt, like cut straight across, you can almost really see where that cut was. And it defeats the purpose of hairs looking like diffused and softened. So what's a cool trick to do is hold that hair out and we're gonna do it like a clock. So your scissors are gonna point in, what is that, 9 o'clock, then 12 o'clock, and then 3 o'clock. So you're actually doing 3 cuts, but in a circle, half circle. So we're gonna cut in first, then we're gonna cut straight up, and then we're gonna cut out. And it creates a lot more diffusion and that you can't see. It just hides it more. And that would be my thinning shear tip. Usually at the end of the haircut, when you're doing rate removal or point cutting, anything like that, it is not to really mess. not to recut a line or not to recut the layers. It's to soften any chunkiness that you see in the layers or to break up or create more movement. You don't want to necessarily go redo a whole layering. It's more like, oh, maybe if you did find a piece that was too long, or when I look at this bangs, I feel like this looks fine here, but this looks chunky down here. So that's where I want to remove weight. You don't want to go and redo the whole haircut, just refine it. All right, guys, how do we feel about bang trims? That concludes my presentation.
Miss Lahi.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, can you bring the camera a little closer to your paper on your wall so I could take a screenshot of it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Should I do it like in, might have to do it in 3, huh?
No, that's perfect right there. That's perfect. Thank you.
Of course.